Hey, welcome back to the podcast growth series. I'm Rob Z. Today we're going to talk about how to be a great guest on other people's podcasts. So far we've covered a lot about your podcast, right? The launch, the streamlining of it, the monetization of it, and how to find great guests. But another piece of the puzzle is being a great guest on other people's platforms. Now, some people only want to be a guest on other people's platforms. Some people only want to have a podcast. I love to do both. How else do I grow my authority, grow my expertise, and grow my podcast by getting on other people's podcasts? It's a perfect way for me to grow, perfect way for me to make networking connections and build up my expertise and authority in the things that I love to talk about: leadership, communication. So being a guest on shows is very, very important and something you should love to do. Personally, I love interviewing people. I love talking to people, but I love being asked questions. I love being interviewed. It's a lot of fun. So I imagine you might feel the same way also. Before we dive into how you can be an incredible guest on other people's podcasts, I do want to share, just so you know and remember, the Podcast Academy is up right now. Pro Podcaster Academy. In 2 weeks' time, go from launch to lucrative. You can join the waitlist right now at robzwentz.com. At robzwentz, click join the waitlist. You're automatically set up the next time we launch our next Pro Podcaster Academy. And while you're there, download absolutely free the 33-page launch strategy guide. It's a value of $5,000. I wish I would have had this when I was launching a podcast. The Podcast Like a Pro launch strategy guide, 33 pages of everything you need to know about getting your podcast off the ground. Booyah. It's all right here just for you at the website, robzwentz.com. Grab that now. Don't waste any time. Make that a part of what you do right now, okay? So how do we do this? How do we be a guest? I'm going to jump into something we've already talked about, but I'm going to hit this point over again because it's a very important point. Communities. Being in communities is a great way for you to guest on other people's podcasts. I'm a member of multiple communities right now in my life, some paid, some free. Those communities have podcasters in them. The Connected Leaders Academy, which is the sponsor of my podcast, The Unstuck Movement. There's over 400 entrepreneurs at the time of this recording inside of that community. There are dozens and dozens of podcasters in there, more than I probably even know about. I've been on lots of shows already, and I plan to be on a lot more shows in the future. It's something that I love to do. So inside of communities, you can make those things happen. So paid communities are a great way to do that. Another great way to do it, let's jump back over to here. Inside of free communities, right? So simply, what did I do here? I went to Facebook. I searched "Be a Guest Podcasting." Okay, that's the search that I made, and I click "See All" here. There are so many communities for you to be a part of. Okay, some of the biggest ones: 63,000 members. The Podcast Guest Collaboration Community, Professional Podcast Guests. I should join that one. Guest Expert Profit Lab, that sounds good. Christian podcasters, I'm a Christian, I'm going to join that one. So you can jump in here. This is a great way to find guests. This is a great way to be a guest. It can be that simple, all right? As you start to level up in your podcast, though, and you want to get on higher level podcasts that are more watched, more seen. See, when you're on a podcast that's relatively unknown, not saying that's a bad thing. I jump on podcasts that are relatively unknown all the time because I just love having conversations. I love supporting people, connecting with people. But as you start to level up and you want to get on those higher level podcasts, one of the best things to do is to ask. Imagine that. Just ask somebody. Especially if you are the expert in your industry, you're the authority at what you do, then you come with some weight with what you do, right? You have the authority to be able to get in front of somebody and say, hey, here's what I'm great at. I'm a leadership communication coach. I can help people communicate to be able to change their lives, to be able to have the life they want to live, to be able to fix relationships, to be able to level up in their career and their business. I help people communicate to become great leaders. That's what I do. And I would love to be on your podcast to share my message and share what I'm really good at. And by the way, I have a podcast. You could also come on my podcast. There's the next thing, right? You're asking because you've got the expertise and authority. And now if you do a podcast, the other person does a podcast, then be like, listen, we can do a podcast swap. My podcast gets around 30,000 views and downloads a month. Well, I'm not sure what yours gets, but it'd be a perfect swap for the two of us. So you could jump on mine, I could jump on yours, and we could make that happen. Now, as you're going about this, one of the things you're going to want to have is a one-pager to show people, because they're going to want to know who you are and what you're all about. One of the quickest ways to help them know who you are and what you're all about, to build that authority, is going to have a one-pager kind of like this right here. This is something they can check your bio, they can check your social media, your website, things like that, right? But when you first introduce yourself to somebody, send them something like this. That way they can see, oh wow, Rob Wentz, this is what he does: leadership, communication, breakthrough expert, helps people make their message. Oh, speaking topics. Here are 3 things that he talks about most often. Here are great questions for me to ask Rob on the podcast. That starts to get their mind working on what they can talk to you about, and also makes their job easier, and then have all of your connecting information here, right? So this is a digital PDF. They can click each one of these icons and go to my social media. They can click this link and go to my website. They could even call me, and you could call me or text me directly right there from this one-pager that I created. Plus, it makes you look like an expert. Plus, it makes you look like the authority, and you really know what you're talking about, and you've put these pieces in place, right? So get in the communities, ask, podcast swaps, be the expert and the authority at what you do. And that's like the branding, right? That's your website. That is the people that you talk to who know about you, the referrals, right? That is your social media, the one pager, all these things, even your background, right? My background, what am I about? I'm on the air, right? Communications. I'm a Christian, got the cross. I love to read and learn. I got the books. There's my business, Lit. I got some trophies and awards that I've won. It's who I am. When you see me on screen, you get an idea of who I am right off the bat, right? So that is building that authority, building that expertise, get the one pager put together. And then, like I said before, I'm going to mention things that come up over and over again, but referrals are huge. So you get on a big podcast, or somebody, the podcast was powerful. Then you're like, hey, can I get some referrals for other podcasts that I could be on, or connections that you know that would be really helpful for me to level up in the podcasting world? These are really simple things. This stuff's not complicated, but it does take you taking the initiative to go do it. Speaking of taking initiative, I want you to go to get that free guide right now at robzwentz.com. Join the wait list for the Pro Podcaster Academy and get that 33-page launch strategy podcast guide right now at robzwentz.com. I'll catch you back here for part 6. And in part 6, we're going to talk about the outsourcing. So maybe you've got all this put together, all of these things are running, but it's taking up too much of your time. Your business is taken off because you've built the podcasting brand. And now you need to outsource some of this stuff. How do you do that? How do you do that effectively? We'll talk about that on the last episode. I'll see you there.